So, Mr. Adams, this situation, this very contentious situation with the specialized high schools and the specialized high school exams, um, you were a New York State Senator, so you're very familiar, of course, with the Heck-Calendar Act, the backstory with that, and the problems that we're having right now with regards to the specialized high school exams that some people say it's a discriminatory exam because children aren't prepared. But then we also have families who support specialized high schools. My daughter attended a specialized high school. Um, so my question to you, because as mayor and with mayoral control, you have control of the school system. And Mayor Bloomberg, under mayoral control, created additional specialized high schools because the original specialized high schools, as we know, are Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, and LaGuardia. The additional five that we have right now, those were created by Mayor Bloomberg. Lehman High Schools, Staten Island one, the one in Queens. So my question to you is, I know you hear from parents on both sides. How do you plan on addressing the specialized high school debate, as well as the specialized high school exam? Because as mayor, the buck will stop with you under mayoral control.
Thank you for that. First, three of the schools we have no control over. As you indicated, the state would determine that if they're going to repeal the Heck-Calendar decision. Five of them is under the control of the mayor because Mayor Bloomberg started new schools. And I'm saying this, those are 10% of our students. You know, we are in the place of a triage system. Do we want to use all of our political capital and energy fighting for something dealing with 10% of the students? I'm going to come back to that. I need to move, how do I fix where 90% of my students are? That's where I want to go right now. And so the first thing I would do, just as Mayor Bloomberg started 5 new schools, when you look at the thousands of children who take the exam and don't get into the specialized high schools, I say, hey, let's create 5 more. Let's create more seats and use a different criteria. If we don't want to use a test only, let's not use a test only. Let's use a series of things to make the determination of the 5 new schools we put in place. Let's make sure we get that working, that is successful, and then let's revisit the other 8. But first, let's make sure before we tamper with something, let's get something right. Let's build 5 more, and then let's put our real energy into how do we reform where the bulk of our students are that are not receiving a quality education. Because if we remove the SHSAT examination, if we remove that altogether, that is not going to fix our problem. You're still going to have 65% of Black and brown children not meeting proficiency. And so that's a symbolic battle. You know, I know it brings a lot of emotion. I know people are angry about that, but we need to put the bulk of our energy into how do we fix a school system that every year fails Black and brown students. And if we're using a triage system, then that triage system says SHAT is not the first thing we need to be fighting for. We need to be fighting for fixing those other schools.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, Mr. Adams, because there's just so much focus on those few schools when we have a school system with hundreds of schools. But again, I guess it's the hot topic. But yeah, we do need to focus on the 90%.
Yes.
Not just the 10%.
And it takes a lot of discipline, Mona, not to focus on the hot topics. We should focus on the right topics. That's discipline. Because if all the noise, you'll get distracted from the mission. The mission is every child in every block in every school should have an opportunity to be educated and be prepared for the future. And we
So,
should ask ourselves, the question we should ask ourselves, what is preventing that? And list out the things that's preventing that and move based on the highest level of priority, that we remove the highest number of barriers. And trust me when I tell you, SHSAT is not at the top of the list.
I personally, I agree. So, but I also just want to touch on gifted and talented. The gifted and talented exam that was recently voted down by the panel for educational policy. For some of our viewers who are unaware, it's an exam that children can take at the age of 4 to decide whether or not they're gifted and talented and if they can attend one of the GNT schools. A few years ago, in Brooklyn, District 16 finally got their first GNT program. The parents in Bedford-Stuyvesant advocated for that. For you as mayor, what would be your position on GNT programs? Would you increase GNT programs because right now there aren't enough, or will you simply scrap the GNT program?
You know, it's amazing that we had several districts that did not have GNT programs. We had parents who had to travel far distance, parents who had to go through great hurdles to get to the GNT programs. I believe that we do have children who learn differently and who have certain skills, certain talents, and we should not deny that. Number one, I supported an opt-out for the testing instead of children having to figure out how to take the gifted and talented testing. We should have parents opt out. That's number one. Number two, we should look at a full scope of gifted and talent. We're losing a lot of children who are gifted and talented because we're not using a cross section of ways of how to distinguish these various gifts. You could have someone that English is a second language, and they may have some great gifts and skills that we are overlooking. So whichever way we determine how to reinforce and promote those gifts and talents, we need to make sure we are looking at them and testing and determining every scope of those gifts and talents. And second, going back to what I said earlier, Mona, we're setting our kids up for failure. Because if as we start to build out this pipeline, of course, if you came from an affluent community that was stable, good nutrition, reinforce your brain development, by the time you get 4 years old, those first 1,000 days of life for you are totally different from the first 1,000 days of the life of the child that lived in public housing, that lived in a tenement building, that lived in some difficult times. We need to equal the playing field. We spend too much time focusing on what children learn and not enough time focusing on how children learn. That is where we need to put our energy because we have it wrong now.
No, I think a lot of parents would, actually, I don't know any parent that would disagree with that. So continuing on, Ms.